Welcome to Beacon of Speech. I'm Fred Hunt. Who in the hell is that? I haven't seen him in forever. Ted
It
Coley!
seems like it's longer than 2 weeks.
I think it's because we had 2 weeks off and then 3 weeks off before that because of my new job. I've been messing you up. And then last week, Ted went on a nature adventure to the wilderness.
Oh man, I already forgot about that.
You went kayaking. How was kayaking?
It was relaxing.
Was it?
Yeah.
When's the last time you went kayaking?
Never.
That was really your first
That
time
was
kayaking?
really my first time. I went canoeing when I was 10.
When I was a kid, my parents used to take me canoeing. It was usually kind of fun. So,
Well, actually, I remember the last time I went canoeing with my friends. This would have been, probably 30 years ago or something. I remember we got a couple canoes and we tied them together. We tied them together with the life jackets.
I've seen people do that, and then the people who work there, you can't do it while they're looking because they're like, "You can't do that," and you're like, "I'm already down the river." You wait until you go around the first bend and then you tie it. And I remember being in college and I didn't drink, but other people drank, and they would take alcohol and they put it in a net, and you weren't allowed to have it. But the river was cold, so you put the net below the canoe, and then you pull them out. And then when the ranger came, he was like, "Do you have any alcohol in that canoe?" And you could say,
Yeah, you could honestly say no.
"There's no alcohol. Look at my canoe." And then one friend's like leaning so he doesn't see the rope connected to the back. They're like, "There's nothing to see here, officer."
Oh, that's a fur.
Yeah, so the good times back when we were young. So did you drink when you were kayaking?
No, it probably would have helped, but no, I didn't.
I'm glad we're talking about kayaking because I told Ted that I was going to bring him down today. I was going to bring him down. I was going to depress him. And I know he's been not looking forward to Beacon of Speech because of this. I read an article. It was in the Daily Mail. And they had a new study out. Okay? New study. And lots of people die of cancer. They die of heart disease. And doctors can kind of guess. They're like, "Oh, you have terminal cancer. You got 3 months to live or a year to live or, whatever." Right? Everybody has an expiration date. Would you say that's fair?
Mm-hmm.
They did some study, and it was reported in the Daily Mail, that some people can die of loss. I wrote it down. Loss of spirit. Right? People lose the will to live.
I should have been dead a long time ago.
They said that people who really lose the will to live, like they have a husband die or their children die and they don't have anything, and they stop eating and they lose interest. And they did a study of these people. Apparently there's a lot of them. And they said that if you lose your spirit, you can die within 3 days.
Wow.
And they said because the body starts to shut down, you're not eating.
So I must be like the Keith Richards of losing spirit.
Well, I'm reading the article, and I'm like, man, this is really bumming me out. But then I remember I had an uncle, and I'm sorry to bring us down again, but he was like 80, and his wife had passed away, and his daughter never came to see him, and the grandkids didn't care, right? They're all over the nation, and it was like the Metallica video one where. He's lying in the bed. He's like, "Please let me die," and he's nodding his head like in Morse code because he can barely talk.
Yeah.
He's like, "Please let me die." ... dash dash dash, and the video. Have you seen it? The video one by Metallica.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I mean, that's an old song.
Oh yeah, but the whole premise is. The guy, he can't talk, he can't speak, so he's doing the Morse code. He's nodding his head in Morse code,
Yeah.
"Please let me die." And they said that's real. And I'm like, well, I believe the study, but I actually know people in real life who are like, "Please let me die." And they didn't die. They're like, I have no reason to live, and they're still alive. And so what do you think the difference is for people who want to die and then people who want to die, but they still live for like 8 more years?
Mm-hmm.
They're living in the nursing home in their own filth, and they're like, "Please, please let me die. And they're like, no, no, no,
Now,
no.
did you say you know people who want to die but they still
Yeah,
live?
yeah, my uncle did. He
Yeah.
wanted to die. And then my one grandmother, she used to talk about death all the time. And she used to be like, I'm not going to live much longer. But, she was married and she might have been like, even if she wanted to die, if she said she wanted to die, I don't think she really wanted to die because she had a husband, and I'd like to think that she wanted to see me, her grandson. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, look at your face. She didn't care about me enough to want to live, but she suffered a lot because she had diabetes and other
Yeah.
issues. You know what I mean? So I don't. I think she might have said, I'm ready. I'm ready for God to take me, but she liked to see her kids. She liked to see her grandkids. She liked to see her husband. You see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And where more the loss of spirit thing is, there's nothing for me, and people die. You know what I mean? As opposed to people who are in great pain, and they're like, I'm ready for my suffering then. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I just, when I think of people who die, I think of, something takes them. Does that make sense? Cancer took that
Hmm.
person, or heart disease took that person, or the stroke. He had a stroke and they weren't with it. That diseases take people, and it was weird to read in black and white that loss of spirit was a real thing. You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
And you've known people who have died, but
Well, you know what? You know what that
usually,
reminds me of is actually Don Henley had a song on. I think it was his second solo album,
Mhm.
and it was called. I think it was called "You Can't Make Love," and he said it was about. I think it was about his grandfather
Mhm.
who could do anything. He
Yeah.
could build things. He could do anything he wanted to with his hands.
Mhm.
And then his wife died, and he just completely lost the will to live,
Yeah.
and he died too.
Yeah.
And I think the doctors told Don Henley that he just died of like a broken heart.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, the thing is that,
somebody who could fix anything
yeah,
that came his way, but when that happened, it was like he didn't
you
know what to
you
do.
can't fix that.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is that you've heard, since you were a kid, you've heard of stories about people who, died. People who were married for 70 years, their husband died, and 2 days later they died. They
Yeah.
died of a broken heart. But now they're finding they're like coming up with the scientific studies to back up like the folk tales. You see what I'm getting
Hmm.
at? And that's why I was like, wow. And for some reason, the last 2 weeks, I've been thinking about loss of spirit a lot because I love Beacon of Speech, and me and you talk about this all the time. I got the hat, right? And I don't ever want to retire. Okay, now one day I'm probably gonna have to retire, or I'll lose my faculties, or something will happen. But I don't ever want to retire from Beacon of Speech. I want to retire from other things, which we won't talk about on air, right?
Hmm.
But I don't want to retire from Beacon of Speech. I want to keep talking about it, and I hope that when I get up in the morning, that like Beacon of Speech is my motivation. Other things in my life may not motivate me again when it comes to working. And I used to say this to Ted at our last job when we worked together. I said, I don't mind working. I just don't like working here. Right? How many times I say that? About 100?
Hmm.
And we're going to circle back to that later. Remind me. Okay? But one of the things about work that you lose your spirit when you're working because things are out of your control and things are
Yeah.
your fault that aren't your control. And then they're like they make it your problem. And you're like, well, it's not my problem. And they're like, well, it's your problem now.
Hmm.
Now, how many times has that happened to you at work just this week? And everybody's what's the old saying? If you're not the front horse, the view from the back is always the same, right?
Yeah.
And so this loss of spirit's really sitting with me, and I'm sorry to be a Captain Bring Down and talk about death and motivation and stuff, but I'm working on 3 different articles for Beacon of Speech, and I've really had trouble with motivation, not because,
Well, you haven't had a lot of time.
well, yeah, don't start with me there, but it's not so much that I'm not motivated to write the articles. I don't have the time to write the articles when I know that no one's reading them. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, I gotta do work time. You know what I mean? So, because for the last 2 years, part of the Beacon of Speech charm is I've been investing time in it, and for the last couple of weeks I haven't, and I feel really bad. So I want to apologize to you, Ted, because you always work hard, right? And, well, you do. You always work hard, and the last couple of weeks I've been slacking on Beacon of Speech, even though I'm working on articles, and I did have an outline, and one of the things I want to motivate myself to keep pushing Beacon of Speech again so we can make money. So this is our job. Okay? And in my head, I'm like, one day that's going to happen. This will be our job. It'll be me and you, and we'll have some more fun. And we're gonna make cousin Dan and Cliff do it with us.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna bring them along. They don't know it yet, but people from the movie, and I in my head I can still see it working. Okay, and right now it's just work has bogged me down. So I wanted to make sure I publicly apologize to Ted. Do you accept my apology?
Yeah, I was just thinking. It's what, like about the 4th anniversary of the movie. It was around this time, wasn't it?
Yeah. The anniversary of the movie that nobody watched and crashed right into the ground. And our lead actor, we were even looking at him on Facebook. You know, the guy who was supposed to be the lead actor and screwed us at the last minute.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sure he's happy and healthy and spreading his seed across divorced ladies across Cleveland, Ohio. But talking about immorality, last Beacon of Speech, we were talking about the Pope. Okay, and the Pope has really been bringing me down. Besides having loss of spirit. Because, not the dog again. This is why we don't do Beacon of Speech over here, Kevin. Yes.
Well, it looks like Kevin's up to his old tricks.
Yeah, Kevin's up to his old tricks. He wants to go outside,
interrupting the show.
He probably wants to get sprayed by a skunk.
And causing a ruckus.
Yeah. But 2 weeks ago we did Beacon of Speech, and do you remember what we said about the Pope? What did the Pope say?
What did the Pope say?
Yes.
Why
is there a sex abuse scandal?
Well, he said he was just gonna pray about it, right?
Yep, he was gonna pray about it. He was gonna pray about the sex abuse scandal. So I've been watching the last 2 weeks. We did almost a whole show on the Pope and how disappointed I was. And you really lose the first sex abuse scandal that came out, right? You really lose your faith when you see them. They're like, oh, we molested kids? Well, what are you going to do? That happens. And when the church says that, you're like, that's horrible.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's basically their response. Is like, well, we need priests, and priests will be priests, and, And last week, the Pope came out and said, not only is he going to pray about it, but why is the sex abuse scandal happening?
I don't know.
The devil.
Okay.
The devil told the media about the sex abuse scandal.
Are you serious?
Yes. So not only is he whitewashing this away, right? He's like, listen.
So the problem isn't that there was a sex abuse scandal, it's that they reported it.
That the devil went to the media, and the devil told the media. Because the media is making a huge scandal out of it.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you're the Pope, how do you not get this? How could you say it's the devil? You have bishops, priests, deacons, archbishops, all the way down. Any of them could have leaked it to the press, right? Hundreds of people know about this. And he's like, it's the devil. It's like, no, it's not the devil. It's the way you're running your institution.
Yeah, but that's not even the point, though.
And that's the whole point. He doesn't get that right after...
It doesn't matter who leaked it. It's that it's happening.
Right. No, the devil leaked it. And you're like, how do you not get this? And it's like the biggest example you could use of somebody not getting it at all. Because right after the Pennsylvania sex abuse scandal came out, which is what me and you were talking about, right? A week later, they found out that priests abused 4,000 kids in Germany. 4,000 kids in Germany, and the Germans are furious, and the Pope is like,
And you know, it takes a lot to make the Germans furious.
and the Pope is like, the devil! The devil! The devil! It's like, no, it's your... You have to treat the Catholic Church like that's your corporation. And you know how much I hate corporations, right? But you have to treat the Catholic Church in this instance like a corporation. Listen! You abuse those kids. You're fired. No, you're fired. You're fired.
So,
I'm gonna call the cops.
so do you think we're going to have problems now with the Germans now?
We're gonna have problems with the Germans. We're gonna have problems with we if anybody ever watches it, you know what?
Like I said, the real problems are going to start when people start listening.
Because we're gonna switch gears for a minute. Because right now, me and you do not have we don't have high paying jobs. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah. It's always nice to be reminded.
Yeah. So let's pretend Beacon of Speech gets popular one day, right? And we're making good money. Me and you, we're laughing it up. We're making six figures. We're like, Beacon of Speech rules. And then all of a sudden, all these people are listening and they're like, you know what? We don't like what these two are saying about the Pope. And I think we're going to start a boycott. And then, I'll say something stupid, right? I'll be like, let them boycott us. What's going to happen? And then next thing you know, everything's shut down and you hate me because you're like, Fred, you couldn't shut up about the stupid boycott. And, we talk about, how much money we make and how many people watch, right? Right now, almost no one watches, like one or two people. I'm pretty sure maybe one or two people at my work check out to make sure that I'm not like lighting pentagrams in the back.
They're not even watching it like for the right reason.
Yeah. They're like saying, "Oh man, I hope they're not really Satan worshipers." But the example that we're gonna skip a topic, okay? We're gonna go straight to the bottom, okay? Brett Kavanaugh, right? Mm-hmm. Brett Kavanaugh, nobody knew who he was, okay? He went to Yale Law School or Harvard or some other Ivy League school. You remember going to Ivy League school? Mm-hmm. And Brett Kavanaugh, as soon as he graduated, he was a lawyer. And he was a son of a judge and a lawyer. He graduated, he was a lawyer. Then he became a judge, and then he became a bigger judge, and then he became the judge at the Washington, D.C. Circuit Judge. Is that correct?
And he hung around with a guy named Judge.
Yeah, he hung around with a guy named Judge. And then, all of a sudden, he got nominated by Donald Trump, your buddy, not mine. Uh-huh. Your buddy Donald Trump.
That's right.
Nominated Brett Kavanaugh and said, I want him to be my Supreme Court Justice. And everything was smooth sailing, right? A few people are like, we don't like some of his policies. And a few people are like, he's kind of weak on women's rights and abortion rights and stuff like that. But nothing big. You didn't hear anything big about it, right? Then all of a sudden was the allegations that he assaulted a girl in college, right? Now, all of a sudden...
I think it was actually high school.
Was it high school?
I think so.
Okay, high school, college. It doesn't matter, okay? Because... I'll tell you why it doesn't matter. Because and I've been reading up on the law, okay? She says that he did not rape her, okay? But she could tell he wanted to rape her, okay? So, if he assaulted her but did not rape her, okay? I believe in the state he lived in, the statute of limitations for that is up after 2 years for simple assault. Misdemeanor level assault is...
sexual assault.
Yeah, I believe, now again, I'm not a judge, he's a judge. Misdemeanor...
What was the state, Maryland?
Yes. And I believe the statute of limitations for simple assault is 2 years.
2 years.
Okay? So she had 2 years from the time it happened, and... simple assault in Maryland, I believe it was like a $2,000 fine and 6 months in prison if convicted. Nobody gets 6 months for misdemeanor assault unless it's not like your record's this long. You know what I mean? First time, they're like, oh, don't assault somebody. Or somebody seriously injured. You get what I'm getting at? So statute of limitations ended in blah, blah, blah. Whatever year it was, two years later, right? So now it's 2018. They can't try him because statute of limitations is over. He did not rape her, right? She says he did not rape her. He says he did not rape him. They agree on that, okay? What she described is assault, and that has passed. Her time to file a police report on that is passed. You see what I'm saying? So, even if she is telling the God's honest truth, okay, she cannot do anything about it except for go and say he assaulted me to Congress. Okay? Now, when he was on the Washington, D.C. Court of Appeals, he made life and death decisions. Would you say that's fair as a judge?
I would assume, yeah.
She never said anything. Apparently, she had a red line in her head, and her red line was not crossed until 100 million people in America knew who Brett Kavanaugh was. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, once 100 million people are dissecting every word you're saying, excuse me, what's the definition of it? What's the definition of was? Where's the line of sexual assault? Where's boys will be boys? Sexual. You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, that's why every once in a while I think about, this show, and it worries me. Because of the way people are now.
Right.
How if they want to, they can find anything to destroy you.
They can find anything. And the whole thing is that we'll use your buddy Donald Trump. I keep picking on you. Donald Trump has made mistakes in life, right? They're like, Donald Trump, you should not have said grab him by the pussy, right? You should not have said that. Well, lots of guys talk like that in the locker room. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah.
He did not say that a public record. He did not make grab him by the pussy a law, right?
Policy.
It was not policy, right? It was not the policy. Now, some angry feminists might say, it became policy when you elected him, but there is no black and white policy where grab him by the pussy, right? And so people are now out to destroy you, not based on your content, but a character assassination. How many times have you heard Rush Limbaugh talk about the politics of personal destruction?
Yeah.
And he said that's how the left wins, is they destroy. The problem with Rush Limbaugh is that the right does the same thing to leftists all the time. Okay? And they're like, we never do that. Well, right off the top of my head, I think of Al Franken. Right? Al Franken was a senator in Minnesota, and he made a misstep like 20 years ago. And then all of a sudden the right's like, look, Al Franken. And Al Franken resigned. Right? And he resigned in disgrace, and the right is like, oh, well, at the end of the day, we didn't make Al Franken resign. Al Franken resigned of his own accord. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the right is no better than the left, because all it is the right tearing that guy down and the left tearing the other guy down. And that's why the Brett Kavanaugh thing has really been bothering me, because unlike the Pope does not get it. Okay? They're not trying to tear down the Pope. They're not trying to bring down
now you're starting to talk bad about the Pope.
Yeah, oh, no.
No, remember?
Yeah, no. In Brett Kavanaugh's case, this is what I honestly think happened. Okay? You tell me if this is what you think happened or not, right? Okay? This is what I think happened. I think Brett Kavanaugh is an alcoholic. Or at least was when he was a kid. But when you were 18, 19, 20 years old, how many people did you know who would drink and get blackout drunk? Probably half the people you knew. Would you say that's fair?
Well, I mean...
Okay, how many people did you know when you were around 20 that drank until they passed out at least once.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is what I think happened. I think Brett Kavanaugh was at a party and he drank too much. He was like, "I love you, I love you, hey baby, hey baby, hey baby, I love you, I love you." Oh. And being a kid, she was scared to death, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, "This drunk is trying to rape me. Get off me." And she was a good girl, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, get away, get away, get away. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But now you come to a point that happened 30 years ago because Kavanaugh's about our age, right?
Yeah, I think he's like 53.
Yeah. So think of.
And I think she's like a year or two younger than him.
Right. So think of things that would have happened when you were 18 years old, right? I never raped anybody. I assume you didn't rape anybody. I hope that.
No.
But what I'm saying is that there's gray lines. You know what I mean? Did you ever kiss somebody who didn't want to be kissed? And you're like, oh, well, and then the lines are all blurry. Yeah. And the thing that bothered me about Ford, what's her first name?
I can't remember now.
Whatever her first name is. The thing that bothered me about her testimony is I'm sure that he probably tried to force himself on her.
Yeah.
Okay? But she goes, I know he wanted to rape me. And it's like, no. You either was raped or you wasn't raped. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. It's not one of those things where you're like, well, he tried and blah, blah, blah. No. Rape
well, that's the thing. I believe that what she said happened to her.
I believe her too. I do too.
But I'm not convinced that it was him.
Well, that's where we disagree. I think he was probably drunk.
I'm not saying it's definitely not him. I'm just saying I'm not convinced.
Right. See, but this is where I'm at. I think that she is telling the God's honest truth.
Yeah.
But, and this is the but, I keep saying but, right? Let's say she would have woke up the next morning and reported it. She goes, listen, Brett assaulted me. And then they go to the local police department there and said, Brett Kavanaugh, assaulted me. And they're like, they bring him down. He goes, oh, no, I didn't. I was drunk and I don't know what she's talking about. He said, she said, right? Goes to the judge. He goes, you're 17 years old. And he goes, time served, $500. Your dad's a lawyer. That will be expunged in 6 months. You see what I'm saying? And then we wouldn't be talking about it because it happened when he was 18 years old. You see what I'm getting at? Mm-hmm. And so now he's 53 and the Me Too movement says he has to pay. Well, having 100 million people know about your story and 50 million people are defending him, right? And 50 million people hate him, right? Would you say the Me Too movement, half the people hate Kavanaugh and half of them have to stick up for him, right? Mm-hmm. You now have 50 million people minimum who think you're a scumbag, who basically think you're Bill Cosby, right? And no matter what you say, Brett Kavanaugh is not Bill Cosby. Yeah. And angry feminists will say, well, no, he could have been. Well, no, he wasn't. Okay? And again, you have to draw lines.
Well, did you see Lindsey Graham?
No.
You see, he basically went off on those guys, the Democrats.
Well, yeah, because you have to, there's lines everywhere. There's sexual indiscretions, there's assault, there's, just mistakes, and then there's rape. And he did not rape her. Yeah. Okay? And that's all, because once
the thing is that, so far, it could change, but so far, all she has is an allegation.
Right.
She has nothing really backing her up other than, that's not, I know it's not a trial that's going on, but still, you can't.
And that's the whole thing.
You can't ruin somebody's reputation with just an allegation, or at least you shouldn't be able to.
Right, and that's the whole point. Because
Because
again,
then you could ruin anybody
right.
for any reason. Then.
Right. Let's take her at her word that she was assaulted, and I believe her. Okay, I'm on record. I believe her.
Yeah, I do too.
I believe her. But what is the end game? He cannot go to jail. Okay? Even if he comes out and says, I lied the whole time. Screw you. Suck it. I'm the Supreme Court Justice now. You can't double indemnity or whatever. Right? I know the law. You guys all bet ahead. Right? Even if he comes out and says that, he cannot go to jail. You see what I'm getting at? He cannot go to jail. So the best case scenario for her is to make sure he's not on the Supreme Court. Okay? Now, you have to decide if the punishment fit the crime. If he assaulted her when he was 18 years old, again, ifs, ands, buts, right? If he assaulted her when she was 18 years old, is that enough for him is that enough to disqualify him to be on the Supreme Court? You see what I'm getting at? Mm-hmm. Because there is no end game. There's no jail time. There's no fine. The only thing that can happen is he does get on the Supreme Court or he doesn't get on the Supreme Court. Does the crime of sexual assault when you're 18, not rape, sexual assault at 18, disqualify you from the Supreme Court when you are 53? Now, we're going to go back to the Pope. Okay? I used to say this all the time. And I don't know if Ted heard me say this. Do you remember who the last Pope was before Pope Francis?
Yeah, I do, but I can't remember his name.
Pope Benedict. He was an evil German man.
Really?
Yes. He was German Pope.
Okay, so it's okay for you to say bad things about that Pope.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm going to say lots of bad things about
How long
Pope.
was he the Pope? Because I
2 years,
know John.
3 years?
What was it? John Paul II died in 2005.
No, maybe it was 4 or 5. Okay, here's the thing. This is what I used to say about Pope Benedict. I'm sure he's a nice man.
Is he still around?
Yes, he is.
He just retired.
Yes.
I mean, did that ever happen before?
Not in 400 years.
In Popedom?
Not in 400 years. Not in the modern Pope here. It happened, but like back in the Middle Ages, they're like, you're not Pope anymore. We're putting you in jail. He's like, I ain't do nothing. And they're like, you slept with those 4 kids. So he's like, other than that, I ain't do nothing. One of those kids was the king's son. And like, oh crap, So, but that was 400 or 500 years ago. Okay, I thought Pope John Paul II was awesome, right? Mm-hmm. And I thought when he died, was that when they brought in Francis?
Yeah, I believe so.
They brought in Pope Francis, or no, not Francis, Benedict. I'm sorry, Benedict. They brought in Pope Benedict, and they said, "What do we know about Pope Benedict?" And they're like, oh, well, when Pope Benedict was 13 years old, he was growing up in Nazi Germany. And just like all the other kids, he was in Hitler Youth. I'm like, whoa! Whoa! Stop right there. Don't even go on to what he did the rest of his life. Pope Benedict was in Nazi Youth. He was in Hitler's Nazi Youth. Mm-hmm. And they said, yes, but he was young. He was like 13, 14 years old. And they said that you should, by the time...
Don't you understand that kids need structure? And
by the time he was 15 or 16, he knew that Nazi Youth was not for him, and he quit Nazi Youth. Well, yeah, in my head, I'm like thinking, yeah, because you lost the war. That's why you weren't in Nazi Youth anymore. Not because any epiphany that you had, Hitler was defeated, and you're like, oh... That Hitler was bad.
I guess that's over.
They were, yeah, thank goodness. They were killing Jews down the street at the end of the street. Really? Holy cow, that's a new... That oven down there, that was for... And so they said that Benedict was in Nazi Youth, and then he left it. Again, I don't know when. And then, he was a priest, and he was I'm like, no, stop. If you are in Nazi Youth, you should be disqualified from being Pope. And people are like, well, you can't hold a guy to what he did when he was
Yeah.
13 years old. Everybody in Germany was in
Yeah.
Nazi youth.
Everybody was doing it.
Everybody was listening to Hitler. Everybody was saying how awesome Hitler was, right? And my argument was always, then don't elect German Pope. Elect a guy from Poland or Italy or France. You don't have to make a German the Pope. And they're like, well, what'd you expect us to do? Disqualify him because he was a Nazi? Yes! Certain things should disqualify you from being the Pope. Okay, if you're the Pope and you're banging chicks left and right, right? In theory, that should disqualify you from being Pope. And in my head, I always said the same thing. Being in Hitler, you should disqualify you from being Pope. Now, we're going to circle this back around to Brett Kavanaugh. Now, if you are a woman and you're in the Me Too movement, you are going to be screaming at the video monitor, same as me. You're going to be like, if he sexually assaulted any woman in his whole life from the time he was 13 until that should disqualify him from being a Supreme Court justice. Okay? I will listen to that argument. Okay? But if you go with that argument and you say, you cannot be Supreme Court justice if you sexually assaulted a woman or man, depending on your sexuality there, you are disqualifying a whole lot of people from public service, right? And who is deciding what sexual is? You see what I'm saying? Yeah. People steal things. I used to make fun of Tim Allen all the time, and Tim Allen from Last Man Standing.
Yeah, yeah.
And he used to sell drugs to school children in Michigan when he was a kid. And I said he shouldn't be able to be a comedian and make millions of dollars. He sold drugs to school kids, right? And he's
was he a kid at the time?
He was in his 20s.
Oh, and he was selling them to what? Kids in high school?
Yeah. And so you would think, but there's no force that prevents comedians from doing whatever. You see what I'm saying? There is no structural body. So if you want to turn around and say, Brett Kavanaugh, you cannot be on the Supreme Court because you sexually assaulted a woman.
Comedians in general have enough problems. You don't need to make things any harder on them.
You have to make it a level playing field. You have to say nobody is going to do it. You see what I'm saying? Now, all of a sudden, you have to push resources into background checks. You can't be mayor if you were sexually assaulted. You can't be... You see what I'm getting at? Mm-hmm. You can't single out Brett Kavanaugh. And now, say Brett Kavanaugh... We'll take it to the extreme. Say Brett Kavanaugh murdered somebody, right? Now, you would come out and you would say, well, of course he shouldn't be Supreme Court Justice. He murdered somebody. And it just came out, right? It doesn't matter if he's 17 or 18. He murdered somebody. We're not going to have a Supreme Court justice. And I don't think the statute of limitations ends for murder. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, he murdered somebody? You got to get the FBI out to his house. We're going to go exhume the body and do the testing. He'll be in jail by sundown. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You can't just pick people you like or don't like. Okay, you need to have it across the board. If you're not going to let him on the Supreme Court because he had a history, you can't let other people... You see what I'm saying? Now the Me Too people will say, yes, absolutely, right? And you're like, oh, that girl, Asia Ortega. Oh, no, she doesn't count because she's on our side. You see what I'm saying? And it all circles back around to his politics. They're like, you don't understand that once he's on the Supreme Court, his no. I don't want to hear about his politics, not one lick. Okay? He either did it and he shouldn't be on there, or he did it and you think that should be his penalty. His penalty is you do not get on the Supreme Court. Okay? And people are missing the point. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, you mostly agree with me, but you slightly disagree because you think that she is not 100% sure it was him, right?
Right.
And my argument is, I think something like that would stick in her mind. Like, she would never forget that was Brett. You know, I mean, you remember people from high school, right? And you knew the good kids and the bad kids, and the kids who, like, bullied you in high school. You remember who they were. The same thing with her. I don't think she forgot. I think she has it right on. I just cannot get past, does the penalty fit the crime? Right? And
So you think he's not telling the truth?
oh, no, no. No, I think he is telling the truth by his perception. Okay? Now, let me tell you something. When I was in graduate school, I had a very loose grip on reality, between dreams and reality. Okay? And I did not have a firm grip on reality. And my mind kind of was doing this. Okay? Now, when you are drunk, I've never been drunk before. Okay? Have you been drunk before?
Mm-hmm.
When you are drunk, does your mind do this, where you're not quite with it?
Yeah, I guess.
I think that he was to the point of drunkenness,
Yeah.
where he was like, oh boy, oh Nelly, we're having a good time tonight, right? And I think that he does not remember,
Yeah.
right? And there's lots of things you don't remember when you're drunk, from what I understand. Again, now people are like, Fred, I saw you drink alcohol. Yes, in my life, I've had a glass of alcohol here and a glass of alcohol there. But I've never been drunk. I've been unconscious, knocked unconscious in accidents. I've had 4 concussions. Okay,
4?
and yes.
Wow.
And so
Are you gonna end up like Bernie or?
oh yeah, I'll be like, in the soccer game and the ball.
Although Bernie sounds pretty good now.
Yeah, give it 6 months.
He actually sounds like he's
He's like a roller coaster. I like Bernie Kosar, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that he has good days and bad days. Okay, and that's coming to me one day. Okay, and I remember being knock silly and not knowing up from down. Right. So when I say reality, I'm saying
So you said that's when you were in grad school,
yeah.
and now, do you want to talk about why that was?
No.
Okay.
I will off air. Remind me. Basically, I'll tell you.
Most of the things we say should be off air.
When my wife had cancer, my wife, she had cancer, and I could not calm down. Like, I couldn't shut it off. My brain would not shut off.
Mm-hmm.
And I had panic attacks that ended up in the hospital. Right?
Yeah, I remember.
And it happened at least on 2 occasions. And they said, well, these are panic attacks. And I said, yeah, but I've been having these since I was a kid. And this is just the worst one I ever had. And they said, you've been having panic attacks since you were a kid? I'm like, no, it's just I'm anxious. Right? And they're like, you've been having panic attacks since you were a kid. And I remember being in grad school and like giving speeches and having to like leave the room and like go to the bathroom and like lay on the floor of the bathroom in college and like couldn't function.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, those were panic attacks. I'm like,
It's like, okay, so now what? It's
yeah,
like,
well, I can't go back in time.
Yeah. It's like, I'm sorry, I didn't know if there was something you could do about it back then.
Well, there was. They drug you up, and then you're like, you're not having panic attacks because you're like.
Well, no, I mean back then. It's like when it was happening. It's like you probably didn't know that there was anything.
Yeah. So it's the same thing. Bernie Kosar, one of his last concussions, they told him, they said, listen, you have a concussion. And Bernie Kosar's like, oh yeah, I get hit in the head a lot. I'm only bringing this up because you brought it up. And he goes, oh, this is a concussion? Well, I've had 100 of these. And they're like, oh my God, you shouldn't be playing football. If you've had 100 concussions, you should not be playing football anymore. You see what I'm getting at? And it was the same thing with me once I had the massive panic attack to put me in the hospital. And I'm talking to them, and I've been having this all my whole life, and they're like, "Oh, well, that's bad."
Tell me about it.
Yeah, you need to take care of that. You probably don't want to have those panic attacks anymore.
That's bad. Thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah, I'm like, oh well, things are much smoother now. But so circling back to grad school, I couldn't sleep. I would go nights where I wouldn't go more than 45 minutes a night without waking up and like freaking out and stuff like that. And in the middle of the day when you're exhausted and you can't sleep, you got your head on your hands and you're half awake and half asleep. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So, like I said, that's the tip of the iceberg. But basically, that's what I'm talking about. And in grad school, like I could not handle it. It was just like too much pressure, and like I could hear the clock tick. Does that make sense?
Okay, so it was mainly just being in grad school then. That
Oh
was
yeah, that was the worst. From the in the worst I ever had it was again when my wife had cancer.
yeah.
But the second worst was in grad school, and like I would just be like wired for sound and just wide awake. And again, I didn't drink alcohol, I didn't do drugs, didn't do anything, and people are like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "I don't know, I don't know, leave me alone. I'm gonna go lock myself in a room and listen to 4 hours of Anthrax." Um, what was the point of my story?
And it's
Where
funny
were we
because
going
it's
to?
like some people are susceptible to things like that and other people aren't.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. But we got way, way off course. I'm looking. Oh, Kavanaugh. So Kavanaugh, in his mind, he did not assault this woman. He's saying, "Listen, I have no conscious recollection of assaulting this woman.
Hmm.
Have you ever been blackout drunk?" No. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And all of it, I've seen at least 5 different articles who said Kavanaugh used to drink and pass out all the time, right? He is lying because he doesn't want, you don't want to admit in front of
Yeah.
100 million
Yeah.
people, "Oh, yeah, I used to get blackout drunk every
Well,
weekend from 18 to 25."
I mean, actually, I think there's a difference. There's actually a difference between passing out and blacking out.
Right. Oh, yeah, I'm
Blacking
not.
out, you're still conscious.
Yeah.
You're still like moving around, but you have no recollection of it.
Yeah.
And passing out is basically just like going to sleep from being drunk.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So in his mind, he's like, "I don't remember it, so it must not have happened. Have you ever passed out drunk?" So you're basically asking Brett Kavanaugh, is there a possibility that this happened while you were unconscious? Well, of course he's going to say no, because he's going to be like, "It didn't happen because I only know my conscious.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know my unconscious." You see what I'm saying? Now you're getting into psychology, like graduate level psychology. And there's a way for both of them to be telling the truth. Now, if he was blackout drunk, like I think, he was, I don't know if he was blackout drunk, but if he was so drunk that he doesn't remember that night and she was scared to death, right? Again, we circle back to, does the penalty of not making the Supreme Court fit the crime? You see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Lots of people do things, people are like, "I ran over that nun while I was drunk. I shouldn't go to jail." And they're like, "No, you ran over a nun while you were drunk. You are going to jail." You see, so there are consequences for your actions if you get blackout drunk. The room goes silent.
Yeah, you're right. I am bummed out now.
I told you I was going to bum you out. Brett Kavanaugh, next show we're going to be talking about whether he got appointed or not. Because I
Well,
want to.
do you want to make predictions on that?
Oh, no, I don't. I think he will. We'll make predictions. I think Brett Kavanaugh will be confirmed.
I say that he won't.
Really?
I think because it's the Senate that votes, right?
I believe so.
And there's 100 senators, right? And
Yes,
what's
because
what's the count? I know the Republicans have the majority, but what is it, 52 or
I think
51?
I believe it's 52-48 or 51-49. And because I read literally 1 hour before we came on air, and it said that 1 hour before it came on air, that if every Republican voted to confirm, it would pass. But behind closed doors, not 51 Republicans have said, we will confirm. You see what I'm getting at?
I'm saying that they're
So you know they pushed a vote for 1 week, right?
right. And I think predictions in general are better when you have one person says one thing. But I'm not doing it just for that reason.
Right.
I, like I said, I'm kind of on the fence, so I'm just going to take the other side. But I honestly believe it's possible because I think the Republicans, one or two of them, will fold like a cheap tent. Because I believe that all the Democrats will align.
I think I agree with you in this point, Ted. I think at the end of the day, the Democrats are going to say, we are going to use this as an issue in the November elections. We are all voting no. And Republicans are going to go and say, listen, this guy there's never a police report. He was never convicted in a court of law. All that's going on is this.
No,
Go ahead.
wait a minute. Let me amend my prediction just a little bit.
Okay.
If there's a tie, the vice president breaks it, right?
My understanding is yes.
I believe that's what will happen.
Oh, you're changing. You're gonna say tie. You're saying confirm. I say there will not. I don't think there'll be a tie, but you'll say there's gonna be a tie, which is very ballsy. That's like going up to a roulette table and saying I'm gonna bet green. I'm gonna bet 00, and you're like, oh, that's a ballsy move. What is green? Is that a 2% chance?
Oh, I don't know.
Because roulette is basically the way the house wins. And again, this is way above my pay grade. Okay, is 49% chance black, 49% chance red, and then the green is the 0. Is that correct? The 00. And so the house makes its money because every time, the chance of it coming up is 2%, which is 1 in 50. 1 in 50 chances of nobody wins. Everybody bets red, everybody bets black. 1 in 50, the house gets all the money. It doesn't sound like a lot, but throughout the day, that turns out to be a lot. You see what I'm getting at? And the house always wins because they stack the odds. And so again, you betting 00 is like betting green in roulette, which is very ballsy. I appreciate your betting odds, sir.
Yeah, but that's what makes it fun, stuff like that, And the thing is, you can see that there's a possibility of that happening.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Listen, unless something comes out magically in the wash in the next week, the vote's going to be 52-48, 53-40. You see what I'm saying? Even if he fails, it's not going to be 80-20.
But the thing is, just think if my scenario happens, just think of how much more divided.
Oh,
I mean, it'll be like
the Al Gore Bush Supreme Court case where they're like, they gave Bush the presidency. And again, that's why you should be voting Libertarian. You shouldn't be voting Democrat or Republican. I just read an article because Gary Johnson is running for Senate. And Gary Johnson came out and he said, it is never a wasted vote to vote your conscience. And so I appreciate Gary Johnson supporting me, who supports Gary Johnson. Because he was talking about me specifically. I know he was. We don't have a lot of time because I told Ted I will not keep him here till midnight. Since this is a sad beacon of speech since last time I saw you, Burt Reynolds passed away. Did you like Burt Reynolds?
Yeah, I did.
Would you like?
Was there anybody who didn't like him? Really?
I think some people thought he was kind of a jerk, but I liked him. Okay,
he's a good guy.
He's a good guy. Burt Reynolds. I thought in Smokey and the Bandit, it was like literal like movie magic. Okay, him and Sally Field, you could tell they were falling in love in that movie. Okay, that was great. And it was funny, and Jackie Gleason. It was a great movie for the 70s. It's not high art. It's not anything that was going to win an Oscar, but it was a fun summer movie. You see what I'm getting at? And uh, Fast Times, Young Love, blah blah blah. Right now, I also liked when he did Cannonball Run. I always thought the Cannonball Run movies were really funny. Right? And when I was a kid, one of my favorite movies was a movie called "It's a Mad, 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 Mad World." Okay, and I used to watch it every Thanksgiving. They would play it every Thanksgiving, and for 3 hours, what would happen is on Thanksgiving Day, I would go out and play football with my friends for like 8 years in a row, from the time I was like 13 to 21.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and we would play football in the morning, and then at noon, "It's a Mad, 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 Mad World" would come on, and then I would watch it and fall asleep. Because I played football in the morning, until as much of the movie as I could watch, and I'd wake up and eat dinner.
That's the life.
Yeah, and it
That
was
whole day that you described is like
awesome.
heaven.
Yes, and after that, I always thought Cannonball Run was like in the vein of "It's a Mad, Mad World," and I know the plot's different, but all it is a bunch of celebrities and comedians just hacking it up in front of the camera and having fun. You know what I'm getting at? And to me, Cannonball Run was a really fun movie. The critics destroyed it, said there's no plot, there's no point. Well, there doesn't have to be a plot or a point. It's fun movie.
That's Didn't they make two of them?
Yeah, but part 2 wasn't as good.
That never is. I'm gonna have to watch the first one again because I'll be honest with you. I don't think I ever watched that whole movie.
Okay.
I mean, not like on purpose. It's just one of those movies that I'll always catch like just parts of it.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever saw the whole thing.
Well, the thing is, as he got older, he did that Evening Shade,
Yeah.
which I thought was horrible. I thought that was terrible. I'm like, I don't like Burt Reynolds anymore. But I always liked Burt Reynolds, okay? Except for Evening Shade. And when he died, it was sad because it was like a little bit of Americana. You know what I mean? Burt Reynolds, apple pie, baseball, stuff like that. When I think of American, like folk heroes or whatever, I'm wiggling my hands around. I don't know what I'm trying to describe.
Just out of curiosity, because I was talking to my uncle the other day, and somebody asked, "What did he die from? Do you know?" I know he was 82, but
He was 82, and I did read it, and I can't remember. But they said he's been in failing health for years, so I don't know exactly what he died from. But again, I did read something like there's a lot of alcohol, there's a lot of drugs in the 70s. You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So I do not want to disparage Burt Reynolds, but I'm sure let's put it this way. I think the fast lifestyle caught up with him. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So rest in peace, Burt Reynolds. And right before we started, literally, I was torturing Ted. I was making him watch Norm Macdonald as Burt Reynolds on Saturday Night Live, and even Norm Macdonald was funny doing that. So, R.I.P. Burt Reynolds. I only have one thing left on the outline. We'll touch on it very quickly because I promised you I would. Okay, you asked me about Josh Gordon. Okay. Scumbag. Now, when we get sued for slander, okay, let's be very clear. This is not Ted Coley. This is Fred Hunt, okay? Scumbag Josh Gordon, I am not rooting for him, okay? He missed training camp because he went back to rehab, right? He came back. He played one game, okay? I don't know if you know all the facts, so me and you are going to go over it. He played one game. Okay? What happened after he played one game?
After he played, didn't he like pull a hamstring or something?
Yes. How did he pull a hamstring?
It was like a photo shoot.
Photo shoot. He played one game. He pulled his hamstring. and he wasn't doing it, working out. He was set to play on Sunday. He shows up for practice on Friday or Saturday or walkthrough or whatever the hell they doing. They said he wasn't himself. He had a pulled hamstring, right? And it wasn't like a team photo. You know what I mean? It was a photo shoot. And when they confronted him about it, he's like, well, I'm only on my rookie contract. I got to make money. It's like, you make money playing football, not doing photo shoots. Right? And so the Browns cut him. Oh, no, I take that back. The Browns kind of traded him. Did you see what the parameters of the trade were?
Oh, no, I don't know.
Because we're going to circle back around to Josh Gordon while I'm not rooting for him. The Browns traded Josh Gordon to the New England Patriots for a 5th-round draft pick. And once we get the 5th-round draft pick, we being the Cleveland Browns, we have to send a 7th-round draft pick back to New England. So once everything comes out in the wash, basically we traded Josh Gordon to New England so we could move up from spot number 320 to spot number 280. Basically, we traded the rights to move up 40 spots in the draft. But not from 40 to 1, from 320 to 280. Mm-hmm. Okay? So we don't even get an extra player. All we did was move up in the draft 40 spots.
Is that next year?
Next year, which is literally nothing. There's 5th-rounders who don't make the team every single year. You see where I'm going with this? Now, Josh Gordon pulled his hamstring. They traded him, right, to New England. He gets to New England, and they said, oh, his hamstring's not that bad. We're going to play him on Sunday, right? What happened this past Sunday for New England?
Did they get beat?
They got beat. Tom Brady was mad. They were mad that they lost. And why wasn't Josh Gordon mad? Why wasn't he on the sidelines throwing a tantrum?
I don't know.
Because he was inactive because they said the groin quad, what kind of injury was it?
Hamstring.
The hamstring injury was worse than they thought at the beginning of the week, and they made him inactive for his first game. So not only did we trade him away, but he's already inactive for the Patriots. And the Patriots are like, we don't care. We don't care moving down 40 spots. That's one guy less that we have to pay. Right? So they still, if he turns out good at the end of the year, the Patriots still win. Okay? Even if he plays 5 good games and then they have to cut him, the Patriots still win. There's no scenario where the Browns win, because what makes me mad about the trade is the Browns, he couldn't play, and they waited basically for 4 years for him. And they said, we're going to stick by Josh Gordon. As soon as he could play is when they got rid of him. They should have got rid of him when he couldn't play, and then when he could play, that's when you're patient with him. Not vice versa. The Browns literally played it the opposite way they should have. They should have cut him on like his 5th suspension instead of the 6th suspension. And they should have kept him after that first game and said, listen, Josh, you are not going to make money unless you get on the field.
Well, that's why, like, when I heard that they were getting rid of him, my comment was, why now?
Yeah, me too. I'm like, he can play now. He can go out and catch the football. In 2 days, he can play a game. Right?
I mean, what did they put? They basically put up with him for 6 years, right?
Yes. Yep.
I'm like, you might as well put up with him for his whole career then.
Yeah. Yeah. What was the line in the sand? They're like, well...
what did he do that? Now this, you've gone too far.
Yeah. The gone too far was the photo shoot. You hurt your hamstring at a photo shoot. You mean doing mountains of drugs at the team faculty was okay?
Line.
Yeah. So Josh Gordon just pisses me off to no end. And people are like, well, you have to root for addicts. I'm like, oh, no. I root for him to leave football and get his life together, and he could work at the car dealership, and he can sell cars, and he can be clean and sober, and he can make 50 grand a year selling Subarus in Columbus. Okay? And I root for him that way, that he has a nice, successful, middle-class career. Okay? As for him making millions of dollars catching a football, screw him. See, I'm drinking orange pop today. Usually I'm drinking Coke or Pepsi. So, but we are done. Did you have anything else you wanted to add since I'm basically going to hell? I was slandering the Pope all for a half an hour today.
Well, which Pope? Benedict?
Yeah,
or?
Benedict. He's still alive, but he lost his. He gave up his papal powers when he abdicated to Francis. Do you want to do a song of the day? Not really. Do you have anything in mind? I know I always ask you when you're not ready.
You're right, you do. I don't know.
I was going to ask you.
Well, why don't you do it?
Oh! How about this? I'm doing an article about a band called Fiddler. And they sing a song about cocaine. Okay?
These are all these songs that I don't know.
Well, yeah, I know. But when I say songs about cocaine, what do you think about? Ted Coley.
Clapton.
And so in
We
dedication
did
to Clapton,
that song in the band.
Did you really?
Yeah. I
Did you like
never liked that song. That song to me is boring.
Well, this is how we'll tie up Beacon of Speech. Is we started with Loss of Spirit. And Eric Clapton says he's losing his agility in his fingers. You know, I keep wiggling my fingers this episode. I don't know why.
He's, 73?
Yeah, 73. And he's losing agility in his fingers.
What does he expect?
And he said that drug use has caught up with him. And
It couldn't just be old age.
But he said that if he can't play guitar anymore, he might as well just be dead. Because his life is the guitar, right? And he says, my life is my fingers,
Yeah.
right? My brain talking to my fingers. I'm going to play the guitar. And if I can't play guitar, I might as well be dead. And so...
Did he really say that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I dedicate Song of the Day to Eric Clapton, who
And his fingers.
who hopefully does not lose his spirit. But when I think of cocaine, I think of... Or the song, not the drug cocaine. When I think of the song, I think of Eric Clapton's cocaine.
That's too bad. No, it's too bad that Eric Clapton's having a hard time.
It's too bad. It's too bad that we're laughing about Eric Clapton.
No, because I like Clapton.
Ted's gonna go off air and he's gonna be like, "For now, I don't do Beacon of Speech anymore. You laugh at my heroes. They lose their spirit, and you're laughing at them."
Now, did this just happen?
I read it 3 or 4 months ago. It wasn't within the last week or so. But if you want, when we get off air, I'll look it up and I'll show it to you. So.
Wow.
But yeah, so to keep our bummer episode. See, now you're going to be like, I'm going to wait another month before doing another Beacon of Speech. You're going to want to see the outline before we do it the next time.